on July the 10th. July 10th at exactly 6:07 p.m. We'll start now with our public hearings and then go back to general business. Our first order of business is item number 30. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, this is a single public hearing on an ordinance that would regulate simulated gambling facilities. While the legislature some years ago adopted what they believed to be a ban, there has been an attempt to kind of, if you would, circumvent that. And so we have suggested and are recommending that you adopt this ordinance, which would prohibit simulated gambling facilities in Leon County. It will supplement the state statute.
Thank you. The motion for staff recommendation. Staff recommendation been moved by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Vice Chair Jackson. Commissioner Deloge, you have the floor.
For those of y'all that don't remember the Internet Cafe saga, we, frankly, thanks to Herb to a large degree, we led the state in kind of getting out in front of that and knocked it down. And it's the kind of thing in a community like ours, really, it's effectively gambling with no rules. And so if they have found a workaround, I'm all in for trying to stop that. So it's it can't happen fast enough as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
No speakers.
I have no speakers on the item. Commissioner Proctor.
Ms. County Attorney, a few years ago, Gaston County has been in a struggle, whereas the state has tried to isolate gambling in the areas of South Florida on Native American reservations. There's been an effort to stonewall and to keep Gaston County from having gambling. Is there anything that we're doing here, say like a future commission opted to have gambling in Leon County and not for it to be specific to the South Florida regions? Is there anything that...
This would not interfere with that.
Very good. Thank you.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Vice Chair Jackson. All those in favor of the motion on the floor for staff recommendation indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Commissioner Dozier out of chambers. Item number 31.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, this is your first and only public hearing for the county to disclaim any right of ownership on a portion of property. It's a technical cleanup required by Florida statute to provide the owner with clear title to their property. We have no speakers on. Actually, we do have one speaker on this item. Sorry about that. Martin Freeman.
Name and address for the record, please.
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Marty Freeman. I'm just here to answer questions on behalf of the property owner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Option 1 has been moved by Commissioner Lindley. Seconded by Commissioner Deloge. Commissioner Proctor? No? All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Commissioner Dozier out of chambers. Item number 32.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This agenda item seeks board approval to submit an application for a CDBG grant in the amount of $750,000. If awarded, the funds will be utilized for renovations of the Concord School in the Miccosukee Community Center in support of the county's Sense of Place initiative. Staff recommends option 1. We have no speakers on this item.
Staff recommendation has been moved by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Lindley. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Commissioner Dozier out of chambers. Item number 33.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, we do have a few speakers on this item, Commissioners. This is a continuance of your first and only public hearing from April 10th. As you will recall, Commissioners, on a proposed ordinance to amend the official zoning map to change the zoning classification of approximately 31 acres across 2 parcels at the southeast corner of Bull Headley and Bannerman Roads from lake protection to lake protection node. The proposal is consistent with the county's requirements for rezoning and has also been recommended by the Planning Commission. Commissioners, since the last time you met on this item, staff prepared a thorough response to the written comments that we've received. Those are included in your item. Should the board approve the request for rezoning, the next step requires the developer to submit an application to begin the site development plan approval process. At that time, the applicant will be required to submit the proposed site plan for the property to include things that you may hear tonight from neighbors, including the layout, the design, buffering, the number of units, the intensity and density of the project. That's not what you're doing tonight. In addition, since your last meeting, the county and city have agreed to advance fund the construction of Blueprint Sales Tax Project, which will widen Bannerman Road to DeCesta Drive. One of the reasons why the board wanted this item postponed until tonight. Also, the county and the city at that same time directed staff, Blueprint staff, to prepare analysis on the cost and viability of extending that project, the widening west all the way to Bull Healy Road, and that's in the process as well. Commissioners, if the board would like, Cherie is prepared to provide a more thorough overview of the rezoning request at this time. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I'll hand it back to you to receive the direction from the board.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding,
yes, sir.
and as such, we are not supposed to have ex parte communications. If we do, though, by law, we need to file a memo of those ex parte communications on the day of the IA meeting. Because that transportation vote was closely related to this, I did have a conversation with the developer's attorney, the president of a homeowners association, the gentleman representing the homeowners association, and a concerned citizen that lives in Summerbrook that was in the meeting. That memo is public record that I have filed with the county attorney if anybody's interested in reading it. But by law, I wanted to get that on the record before we even started.
Thank you. Any more commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Could county attorney please frame the issue of what we're acting or not acting on tonight? Could you just set the framework? I've heard a whole lot. What are we here for today?
Before you do that, Mr. Attorney, I also would like to report ex parte communication with the representative of the Homeowners Association as well as one of the practitioners. I was sent a message by the representative of the Homeowners Association letting me know that he was representing the Summerbrook Homeowners Association, and I was approached by the petitioner to tell me his reasoning for the project. I did not engage in either of communications. Mr. Attorney.
Anybody else? Fess up. Commissioner Proctor, Mr. Chairman, this is a rezoning. So that's as the county administrator indicated, this is not site plan approval. This is not concurrency. This is a rezoning. And in your code, and specifically in section, it's 10-6.205, subsection B11 there. That lists the factors which you should consider when a rezoning application is before you. I could read them to you, but let me just refer to the staff analysis that was done. It is set forth in your agenda item in pages 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So those listed 6 items are the criteria by which you are to judge a rezoning application. You can, if you believe that they're erroneous, differ with the staff's analysis, but will need to specifically state what those differences are if you wish to disagree. But those are the factors that you utilize in a rezoning. You're not looking at anything that relates to site plan approval or the aerial view or any of those sorts of things, because that's not before you yet.
Speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, the first speaker, and I've got 25 speaker cards here, so I'll...
Yes, Cherie?
Good evening. Vince hit on a few of the points, so I'll move quickly along those that we've heard. But this, just as to make certain everyone's familiar, this is the site. The parcel under ownership is the larger one in gray, but the one looking for rezoning is just that portion, 30.9 acres. How we've gotten here, historically the area was agriculturally zoned, and then in the early 90s changed to lake protection to support the protection of Lake Jackson. And then several years in the early 20-teens, we worked on the comprehensive plan and land development amendments, creating the Lake Protection Node District. The reasoning for this was to allow some more sustainable development and redevelopment in the Lake Protection District, which had not seen a lot over the course of years. The guiding principles were smart growth principles for the Lake Protection Node. We'd also seen similar node and successful node implementation on Mahan, where you channel the growth into major intersections. This, by increasing the density and types of uses allowed at those intersections. This is implementing the vision statement of the comprehensive plan, which is to help guide, the goal of which is to help guide population into areas where we already have developed development. This balances growth with the neighborhood and environmental protection, because that growth, for example, between now and 2045, about 17 years from now, we need to provide about 24,000 new homes. If those are spread out, that takes up a lot of room. So we're looking to channel those into areas where the infrastructure already exists, which is, preservation and is fiscally sustainable over the long term. We have to also balance that with the neighborhood preservation. This is the land development code that depicts the areas that are that are eligible for rezoning to the node, and this parcel, of course, is within that. Just a couple of points. We talked about the site plan in a later phase, and that this is only allowed within approximately within a quarter mile of the Bull Headley and Bannerman Road intersection, and allows a mixture of uses, and compact development is encouraged. This is included in the zoning report, which shows that it is an increase in density within this area to 8 units per acre. The heights are still relatively similar. The major actions in the past: in March, the Planning Commission reviewed this and voted 5-1 to 5, consistent with the comprehensive plan. Then, of course, this was seen by this board on April 10th, and as was mentioned, it was delayed, one, so that we could address correspondence that was received the day of the hearing. There was also discussion of the Bannerman Road project. A couple of points regarding some of that correspondence that was received. The site plan will resolve a lot of those questions, and the site plan is guided by the Lake Protection Node Zoning District standards. That's where the key elements of finding that balance I mentioned earlier between neighborhood and environmental preservation, by allowing growth in our urban service area. A lot of that is accomplished with the buffer standards, the lighting standards, and other standards laid out in the Lake Protection Node Zoning District, which would come into play once a site plan is submitted. Development services and environmental management, would take the review when that site plan comes in. The comprehensive plan, just to reiterate, the key point here is that the Lake Protection Node is helping to implement that urban service area goal to prevent sprawl, and that it specifically lays out that this intersection is eligible for changing to the Lake Protection Node District. The compatibility, it was found, when the Lake Protection Node District was established, it was found to be consistent with the comprehensive plan at that time. Prior to those changes, non-residential uses could have been allowed throughout the Lake Protection District through the PUD process. This now restricts the non-residential at just the major intersections. There was a point about the lake protection flume that gets to a little bit of a technical detail here, but essentially that matrix is not applicable to this question.
What do flume mean?
A future land use map.
Okay, thank you.
If the rezoning is approved, then at that point a site plan would be submitted and deal with the issues that Vince mentioned earlier. And of course, he mentioned also the IA meeting, and that there was the road widening up to Tequesta was approved, and then staff will be back in analysis of expanding that further. So staff recommendation is to approve the change from lake protection to lake protection node for the 30.9 acre piece. Any questions?
Speakers, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I have 25 speaker cards. I will read the speaker and who will be following the speaker because of the number so that folks can be prepared and be on deck. The first speaker is Al Russell, to be followed by Colleen Castile.
Name and address for record, please, sir.
My name's Al Russell, 8114 Holly Ridge Trail, Clarn Lakes, and I'm here to support the item this evening. And I think it's a Benjamin Crossing, all the development with Publix and Summerbrook when it was developed. I was out there before that was developed and turned out good. And I think this is something that should be supported.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Colleen Castile, to be followed by Robert Fink.
Name and address for record, please, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Colleen Castile. My address is 3209 Atwood Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. Thank you very much again for indulging the public here for their opinions on your actions. I formerly served as the Department of Community Services Secretary and Community Affairs Secretary, and was well involved in lots of growth management issues all across the state. What we've done here in Leon County has been a pretty premier comprehensive plan. We, again, set out a set of rules for all of the developers, all of the new businesses that we want to come here, for creating senses of place that we have all throughout our community. And you guys have done an excellent job of that. So I also work in other communities representing developers, and I want to tell you that when you have a community where the rules are not followed and somebody coming in doesn't know, essentially what the responsibility is going to be, what actions they have to tick off in order to comply with our rules, our regulations, RFPs, all of that. When you have a community like that, it serves as a disincentive to growth, for job creation, for people to relocate, for job providers to relocate here. So again, here's an organization, here is a project that meets all of the letters of the rules that we've put out, and your support of that, having your back to the staff and the community members who were very active in creating these lake protection nodes and these lake protection zones, particularly up at Bannerman, is an important part that you play in making Tallahassee and Leon County a great place to locate, to stay here after you graduate from any of our fine universities and community college, and appreciate all of your consideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Robert Fink, to be followed by Martha Williams.
Hello, my name's Robert Fink. I live at 7126 Shady Grove Way inside Summerbrook subdivision. When I was looking at this proposal to change the zoning, I looked at it was lake protection, and I wondered why it was lake protection. It wasn't really hard to figure that one out. There's 15 lakes within a mile of there. You've got 5 in Summerbrook, you've got 6 in Clarn Lakes, you've got the largest lake in Leon County, which is Lake Ammonia, and we're in the Lake Jackson watershed. So the comp plan, they said it's an agreement with the comp plan. That's if it goes to the lake protection node. We have zoning for a reason. I mean, we zone things, and sometimes we change zones. I understand that. This is not one of them. I guess the reason people look at it, they say, well, we need more homes out there. Well, we have 50,000 people on the northeast quadrant and over 21,000 homes. That's pretty densely populated compared to other parts of the county. I can't believe it's even come to this, that we're going to actually change the zoning to allow higher density. Under the lake, on the lake protection, it's one house per 2 acres. Now we're going to have 16 in addition to apartments. the traffic out there is horrendous now. I know they're talking about extending the 2 lanes all the way to, I guess, Bull Headley and eventually Meridian. But you know, a lot of the people that moved out there for a reason. You have large lots, you know, the beautiful trees and everything, and now you're coming in and saying, okay, we're going to change the rules now. Now we're just going to slap as many as we can in there. No, I don't. I'm bewildered that we have to. You know, you guys, we elect you to look out for the citizens of Tallahassee. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
Martha Williams, to be followed by Raphael Merriman.
Name and address for record, please.
I'm Martha Williams. I live at 1341 Conservancy Drive in Summerbrook. I have bullet points for you, nothing lengthy. I think that the lake preservation node designation is too ambiguous. There are too many options, too many ways that could go, and I think that we need to have it restricted to, if it's going to be residential, have it residential. Don't throw all this other stuff, all these other possibilities into that. I think calling it lake protection, as our previous speaker said, is a misnomer if we're going to develop that. To protect it, we really need the green space and not development. The area retail that we've already got at Bannerman and Thomasville is underutilized. I mean, there are empty storefronts all through those shopping centers. I don't think we need any more retail in that vicinity. Regarding notification, the notification area when this project went for rezoning in the first place was laughably small. I think it needs to be a mile, you know, not 1,500 feet within the intersection. And multimodal, that's one of the big things in this. You know, we could be multimodal out there now if we had sidewalks or if we had a bike path. But right now, we've got nothing except safe transit for cars. There's no way for a pedestrian or a bicycle to get out of Summerbrook safely. We would get creamed on the side of the road. There's no shoulder, no sidewalks, no bike paths. And if this development is going to be multimodal, it's got to be multimodal all the way, not just within itself. I moved to Tallahassee 2 years ago because it's green. And I want it to stay green. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Raphael Merriman, to be followed by Gina Khan.
Name and address for record, please.
Good evening. Raphael Merriman, 2054 Lake Hall Road. And I'm going to keep this brief for you all this evening. Giving everything that's been spoken and considering all facts at hand, I believe that the best option for our community would be to approve this rezoning. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Next speaker.
Gina Khan, to be followed by Chris Ciariatelli, and I apologize if I butchered your last name.
Name and address for record, please, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Gina. I moved to Tallahassee 2 years ago from Houston, Texas. I'm a 30-year-old professional, and I've owned 3 companies. I'm a hard worker, and I'm a strong earner. Despite all of this, I've found it pretty difficult to find decent housing in the north side of Tallahassee, where I was born, where I grew up, where I had all my memories. I have been home shopping for 8 months, and I find it difficult to find anything under $300,000 without sacrificing on size or age. I believe that this spot is already in the middle of a bunch of neighborhoods. There's lots of infrastructure already in place. And I think that Tallahassee needs to pave the way for young professionals like myself, because there's not a lot of us, and many people have a story like mine. We went to Florida State, we were educated here, but we left because of resources. So I think this neighborhood could be a gateway for people like me, and I support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Chris Ciariatelli, to be followed by Fletcher Dillmore.
Good evening. My name is Chris Ciariatelli. I'm at 1361 Conservancy Court East in Summerbrook. On a cul-de-sac that backs up to this proposed property change, high density, And I'm going to speak as just a resident, not as there's the lake and all the zoning that's going on here. When I first heard about this was just a few months ago, to be honest with you, and I've been following it since then and looking at the site plan and where these roads are going to come through into Summerbrook. And one of those roads that is proposed is only 7 houses away from the end of my block that's going to pedal or funnel probably an additional 1,000 cars a day between 2 beautiful homes on Conservancy Drive East that will dead end at a residential house with children. And we're going to have all these cars in this development coming through Conservancy down to Summerbrook Drive, going to head over to Hawks Rise. The traffic already, coming through Bannerman Road is a nightmare. Coming through Summerbrook now, it's going to even make it worse. I don't think we need, number one, an open road into Summerbrook. If this is a planned community, let them have their own damn roads. We don't need any roads coming through Summerbrook additional. We have a quiet neighborhood. I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on my house for what it is. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood with friendly people. The crime is going to increase. You're going to have high-density 3 to 4 4-story apartment buildings, multiple families moving in. Heck, Bull Headley Road's going to look like Mahan Drive in Capitol Circle if we go forward with this. This cannot go through. I mean, I believe in affordable housing for people, but I also believe that our community needs a lot more from you all. We elect you all to watch out for us. We heard this earlier. You're not watching out for us. You're watching out now for a developer who has steamrolled his way into Tallahassee and put up Ant Hill Farms down Ox Bottom Road, which you see now where the Memory Center is at, and that new senior living building. I don't want to look at that out my back damn window. I have a quiet porch. I have a great family, and I don't want to see that happen in our neighborhood. Our values are going to decrease. Okay? We're going to have cars funneling through a quiet Conservancy Drive East neighborhood. I don't want that. I don't want kids running in from next door, lingering and loitering in our neighborhoods. I don't want that. It's not what I spent several $100,000 for. I don't want the cars coming through. I don't want the development to begin with, because I back up to the damn thing. Okay, I'm fighting for this for everybody else that has small children that walk their children and jog down that block and walk in that block every morning and evening without an influx of people coming through with 8 homes per acre. Give me a damn break. How the hell do you do that? I don't want it. I'm dead set against it. It's not good for Summerbrook. It's not good for our county. It ain't good for Bannerman Road, and it sure is not good for that intersection. We're going to create another Mahan and Capitol Circle right there on Bull Headley Road and Bannerman Road if we don't stop this. So you all need to watch out for us. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, sir.
Fletcher Dillmore to be followed by John Templar.
Hey, yeah, Fletcher Dillmore, 930 Thomasville Road. It's going to be a little less angry than the last guy. But I will say, to actually steal something from like 5 people ago, I'm kind of bewildered that many of you don't want me to be your neighbor. I'm a young professional. I graduated from Florida State. The housing market in Tallahassee is not particularly phenomenal for young people. There's not necessarily a lot of great areas to live in that are affordable, not a lot of good communities. I'd love to join you. The last guy kind of denoted that I could be like the crime sort of guy. I just want to let you know that that's not what they're looking to do, what they're looking to build, that the rezoning would change. But I just hope y'all can have a more favorable opinion, a favorable view of this. I think it'd be phenomenal to bring more young people so everyone in this town is not just old and angry and upset at what the change is coming. Thank you.
John Templar. Excuse me. John Templar to be followed by Jeremy Anderson.
I was wondering if I could hand you guys some pictures.
Yes, sir. If you would like to show them on overhead, sir? You can hand us some, but keep one for yourself.
Incidentally, I am a former owner. My name is John Templar. I am a former owner of a Gadsvini property. I built a home with Premier in 2000. All I can say is be careful what you wish for if you buy one. So the pictures I'm giving you is a picture of the property in 2014 versus 2015 after they cleared it. It's pretty obvious it's cut to spec. All the trees are removed. That lake that you see in the center is what feeds our lakes. It also feeds Lake Jackson. If you go down to Lake Jackson, you cannot launch a boat right now. We're already cut out of the water. It's trickling in, and weeds are growing up. It used to be, I've lived here since 1978, and I learned how to ski. I learned how to fish on that lake in Lake Jackson, and it's practically unusable. We're not getting the water that we need into that lake. This is one of the main sources for that lake. It's the main source for the lakes of Summerbrook. This is the highest elevation. It tears down into our lakes. So this is going to have a vast impact on Summerbrook. Mr. Gadsvini is going to develop the entire property. He's going to cut out that lake. He is going to put in storm drains, and we're not going to get any water. The water quality might be good, but it has to rain for 4 inches to come over to the banks before we'll even see any of that. Our lakes are going to run dry, not to mention Lake Jackson. They might blame it on the sinkhole. It's not the sinkhole. It's the amount of water going into that lake. So being a former owner of a premier property, my driveway, I've got a picture of that if you would like to see it, was a quarter pipe. In fact, the person that bought my driveway can't even park their car in my driveway. My roof leaked consistently. He doesn't stand behind his product. He doesn't come back and fix the problems. My entire yard slid down into my neighbor's yard, which is 50 feet away. He put up a retaining wall that was made out of red clay. He later came back and put it out of wood. It's going to fall again. He's not going to do the infrastructure. He's not going to do the right thing. He's not going to do the right infrastructure for this program. Let's open it up to other builders. Put some space between the houses. He has no interest in this property without high density. Anyway, just wanted to let you guys know that you have 660 homes in Summerbrook that support you if you make the right decision. Not to mention Luna Plantation, Ox Bottom, most of Killearn Lakes. I know there's a few people here that are against what we're saying. You have McBride Hills, McBride Estates. Nobody wants this. It's very clear. Thank you.
Jeremy Anderson, to be followed by Melissa Templar.
Can we put up the planner's image with where the note is, please? Please. Would that be possible?
Thank you. Excuse me.
Yes.
Real quick, for the speakers that are here for the board, I think the homeowners associations have their attorneys, as well as the petitioner has an attorney as well. This is not what we're used to, where they get 30 minutes apiece. They will get 3 minutes as well. My question to the board is if you would like to give them 5 instead of 3, since they're representing those entities. Would the attorneys for each of those entities, please, if you're an attorney right now for the homeowners association or the petitioner, could you please stand real quick or raise your hand? All right. Is there the guy at the podium? Okay, and you're for, okay. So both of you will get 5 minutes.
Okay.
Instead of 3. Please stick to the 5. Thank you.
So we're in attorney discussion right now?
Well, no, I mean, it's just regular, this is just regular comment. If you have questions for the attorneys for those entities, these are the people that you address. Okay. But this is just regular comment from our constituents. But I just want to make it known that these are the 2 attorneys representing these entities, and we want to give them 5 minutes instead of 3. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you this evening, Commissioners. Jeremy Anderson, 1689 Mahan Center Boulevard. I represent Summerbrook Property Homeowners Association. What we're going to try to do today is go over the specific points. I'm going to try to speak clearly. Mr. Hunter, you probably read his correspondence like you read mine. He correctly points out, just like your county attorney did, the criteria by which you're constrained for reviewing this. But that criteria, along with our expert witness that's provided you competent substantial evidence on the record, and he's going to provide more tonight, are going to provide you a basis for denial. Very important in this analysis, and I'm going to go a little slow here, is that your comprehensive plan and your code provision actually deems this sort of hearing we're doing tonight a rezone as development. That's very important, because if you read your staff analysis, they contend that this isn't development. We got to throw all the review all the way just to the site plan process and do no thorough review at this point in the process. If you look at those criteria, it tells every one of you, look at consistencies with the comprehensive plan, look at the, whether it's compatible with adjacent developments, whether it's in conformance to the land development code, among a number other things. If you do not deem this as development or consider this as development, and you take the limited review specifically as provided by your staff and outlined in my opinion, I show where they specifically limited one provision in the comprehensive plan essentially they looked at. You have multi-hundred pages and numerous provisions in your comprehensive plan that provide a review and provide a basis why this is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. Also important is, and it's not consistent because it's a very intense development. We're changing the use. So when I say it is development, it's not hammers and shovels, it's the change in the use which makes it development under your comprehensive plan and your code in the definitional section. What we also got to look at being consistent. You've probably heard this before in your comprehensive plan, it must also be compatible. Well, if you look at the staff analysis, it is void of any compatibility analysis. Your staff essentially quotes the criteria for the intent for the section. They don't actually do a incompatibility or compatibility analysis. What that would have required is them to actually look at the property, look at the properties around it, because they got to look the uses and the conditions on what's to be rezoned and what's going to be there to the adjacent properties. And then you take a look at that, and it's not a granted right that they're going to try to tell you that they get this. It allows you for you to approve it based upon those criteria, but you can take that, and if they did the proper analysis, they would have deemed that the size, the shape, the location would have made it incompatible. But just like that angry individual said, he's going to have multi-story, up to 380,000 potential square feet of commercial use right out his back door. And a proper analysis would determine that this area here should have been reshaped, resized, and may not have been proper in that specific location. That's what a proper compatibility analysis would have done. So if we take the Mr. Hunter's opinion and their expert, and even your planning staff's opinion that we need to limit it, then what do those criteria mean? What is that compatibility analysis? What is that consistency analysis? We've thrown that out. The case law is clear. You have to read and give meaning to each and every word and phrase, and you can't render it meaningless. And that's what they're proposing to do today. Sorry, your staff got it wrong. It happens. But the thing is, what you need to do today is deny the rezoning. We've provided you the basis to do that. I stood in front of you before, in front of the Brookside development. After that hearing, there was a lot of discussion. You even directed your staff to how do we not get all the way to the final stage and realize, hey, we're approving a bad development, and let's make sure we provide the oversight and the review on compatibility and make sure that we have neighborhoods that are adjoining that are going to actually work together and not be incompatible and cause negative impacts. You directed them to do some work on that. Right now, if we approve this, we are going down that same path. Deny it, make them go back, and make them redo the analysis. Thank you. Actually, one thing is, I think, Mr. Chairman, it would be a great question to ask your legal counsel, his interpretation for you for consideration. Is this rezone, is a rezone under your code and under your plan a development? And that should help you guide in your decision making.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask,
yes, Commissioner
could you directly get the other counsel to maybe rebut? I don't want to interrupt what we just heard, and I think a legal comment didactic would be helpful if you could permit that to occur.
Mr. Attorney?
That's up to the applicant's lawyer.
Gary Hunter.
Gary? Listen, for the sake of, if Gary was not next, but are there any objections to the opposing attorney going next from the audience? There are objections, so
Mr. Chairman, this is our hearing.
I understand, but these people have signed up, and I mean,
Mr. Chairman, we heard from that lawyer. We should hear the legal argument, juxtapose one to the other in terms of sequence. But it's your call, Mr. Chairman. You're my leader.
Commissioner Proctor, I'll address his points, and I'm fine. If they don't want me to go now, I'll go last. Okay. I understand what you'd like addressed, and I'll do that when I get
it. It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions?
None.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Melissa Templar to be followed by Stephen Martin.
Name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Pardon?
Name and address for the record.
Melissa Templar, 8089 Longmeadow Lane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here tonight. I'm a homeowner in Summerbrook. And I just want you guys to know your vote tonight is going to determine the future of Northeast Tallahassee. I moved back. I'm born and raised here. There's things I love about Tallahassee. I've moved to big cities, and I don't want Tallahassee to become a concrete jungle. There are places where that is appropriate, and we have infrastructure in other parts of town. We just spent a lot of money widening Orange Avenue and other parts of town where high density, the infrastructure supports it. Those of us in Summerbrook moved there for a reason. And it's not that we don't want young people. We're not against growth and development. Growth and development is good for our city. But we want to be compatible. I should not be hurt by having zoning changes that impact my property value and my way of life. So your vote tonight determines our future, the Tallahassee's future. Keep high density and commercial development where the infrastructure supports it. All of you in the city have approved so much development in the northeast part of town, across the street from the property we're discussing tonight. Oak Grove, Brookside, Bannerman Crossings. I believe the count is over 1,500 homes have already been approved to be in that area. Let's take a pause. Let's see what all this current development does to the environment, does to the traffic, the schools. We don't have to rush. Once things are developed, we can't undo it. The area that we're in questioning, it's been clear cut, and we've lost 100-year-old trees. The commercial type of development that would be permitted to be immediately by Summerbrook allows a concrete jungle of up to 380,000 square feet of commercial space that can be composed of buildings 3 to 4 stories in height. That would be immediately against our neighborhood. How compatible is that? I like all the developments in town, but not right next door where it doesn't match. The proposed node and this rezone is not a given right. Please vote no on the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr.
Stephen Martin to be followed by Ronald Urbina.
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Of the commissioners in front of me that I would like everybody to see, and I'd like to think they're true to their word. I hope everybody can read that, especially the people who spoke these words. And get your eye off your cell phones, sir. I got your words up there. All right. If being in your mid-60s is old, then I'm old and angry. Like somebody else, I've had some experience with this developer. I happen to have the misfortune of living in a neighborhood across Centerville Road from his large-scale development canopy. And so I'm going to speak like a speaker did earlier, with some hindsight of what's been experienced as a result of this. August 2016, major clear-cutting along Fleischman. In response to that, in the Tallahassee Democrat, I believe the reporter might be here, quote, these aren't my words, residents were stunned by clear-cutting of trees on Fleischman Road. It's flabbergasting when people see the shotgun approach to development. Nobody was pleased about the clear cutting. It was blatant. So that was August of 2016. living across Centerville Road in Stonegate neighborhood, we were concerned. So in October of that year, we requested a meeting, and the developer had Alan Wise, whom I don't know if he's in here tonight or not, came to our neighborhood association meeting. And he assured us and reassured us that what happened along Fleischman would not happen and that we would not experience what they did. Claimed that they understood how important Canopy Road was to us. Said that we would not notice any of this. Well, needless to say, if you go out there and you were there before he got his hands on it, you can tell that's not the case. A year later, last September, developers were cited for violating tree protection ordinance in the tree protection zone and removing an unknown amount of protected trees. Following 1 month, cited again for unauthorized removal of additional trees and for performing unauthorized earthwork and grading operations. And you can go see, if you got along Fleischman Court, this gigantic hole they've dug as a holding pond. It is not a pretty sight, I can guarantee you that. Then, in response, Growth Management Director claims these violations were resolved. And this was quoted in the paper. Yet, in her mind, they may have been resolved, but residents of neighborhoods along Stonegate who were involved with that do not believe they've been resolved. And I spoke with Terry Ryan, who was quoted in the newspaper last year as organizing residents. And he, who I saw last week, said that it looks like SHIT. So that has not been resolved in the minds of the neighbors over there. This isn't the first incident. Last summer, Sandco, which is out next to Woodhaven. This developer owns Sandco Mining, Woodhaven neighborhood built in the 1970s. He brings in Sandco Mining Company that all of a sudden changes their entire neighborhood, and I could go on. But they complained about noise from it. In response to that, he brings and builds a 40-foot-high pile of cement debris as a noise barrier. And then they complained that it was an eyesore, and he couldn't understand why they weren't appreciative of what he did, why they weren't grateful. This man doesn't understand the values of the people. But you go look at his backyard. He doesn't have anything in his backyard on Millstone Plantation Road, not where he says he lives in front of you. Go out there. He would never allow anything on this like this on his backyard. Let's obey the golden rule. Why should he be allowed to put in other people's backyard what he would never allow in his own backyard? Thank you.
Ronald Urbina to be followed by Jeff Granquist.
Name and address for record, please, sir.
Do I have to stand in the box or can I stand here?
As long as you turn the microphone towards you.
Perfect. Can you hear me? I'm from California. I hope you'll excuse me. I've seen these fights for 45 years. I want to tell all the people who are opposed to this development how to win. How you win is you get a criminal proceeding against the developer. You take all the things this developer has ever done that is corrupt, and all the things that any of the planning department has ever done that is corrupt, and you make a note of it like Rain Man. Remember Rain Man? He made a note, did this thing wrong, did this thing wrong. Take all the things that developer has ever done that's corrupt, you organize all together, and you go to the FBI in Tallahassee. The FBI is already looking at some developer, I heard, or some project in Tallahassee, so it's a good precedent. So the FBI is trying to do good now. The FBI screwed up in the Trump-Hillary thing, as you may know. So the FBI locally is trying both ways. They screwed up both ways. So the FBI locally is actually an effective place. So I'm serious. This is strange, but true. You organize yourself. You get all the things that the developer's done wrong and the planning commission's done wrong. I don't think these people have ever done anything corrupt. But if they have, write it down, get it all together, and give it to the FBI. And while you're doing that, file a civil suit against this developer in federal court. Again, saying all the things this developer has ever done wrong and anything the planning department has ever done wrong with this developer, file it in federal court. Because, you know, you can argue the weeds here, this, that, this. And one of the things you file in federal court is to change this, you go eventually to the Supreme Court, to change this practice to change the practice of the zoning changes. Because people, I've seen this 50 times. People zone something, and some big corrupt guy comes in, or gal, and they change the zoning. So this is a federal case. You're going to have to go to federal court and say, once and for all, if you zone something, you cannot just have a corrupt guy come in and change the zoning. That is all.
Sir, before you leave, you forgot your name and your address for the record.
Oh, yes.
30 seconds?
I'm Ronald Urbina. I'm at the Howard Johnson on North Monroe. I came here to see if I'm going to buy a property, and one of the things is public transit. You have no public transit here. You're going to have to improve your public transit.
Thank you, sir.
Jeff Granquist to be followed by Pam Briggs.
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Jeff Granquist, 8104 Blenheim Lane, Summerbrook neighborhood. Sadly, I've come to realize through processes like this that when the agendas hit this venue, they're typically already approved. But I'm going to go ahead and tilt at the windmill anyway. Similar numbers to, I believe it was Ms. Templer was saying, I went through the MOPD, which is the Major Ongoing and Proposed Developments Report. I've heard some of these younger folks that are saying that there's nothing available for them, no reason to get them up on the north side. Currently in this document, you have 458 condo units, 3,449 apartments, 1,251 assisted living units, and then you have 3,600 single-family units. Of the 3,600, 569 of them fall in the Hawks Rise, Deer Lake, and Childs school zone. Hawks Rise and Childs both were capped from school choice last year because they're full. You're going to add more houses already. This LPN is going to add additional burden to the infrastructure. Yes, the IA board said that they're going to move forward on expanding the road. It's going to start next year, be done by 2022. But wait a minute. In that item, there's no budget for the actual construction. Something to think about. Commissioner Deloge put out to say, okay, let's look at doing it from Tequesta to Bannerman. It's a great idea. Love to see it happen because quite honestly it needs to in order to be able to move all the traffic. Because if you look at the numbers, if you add the 247 units that are potential in the LPN and rumors of an additional 300 units on that same piece of property, the rest of that property, based on UMTR, which is Michigan Transportation Research, there's roughly it's 1.97 cars per household. Using just the numbers in Bannerman, just along the Bannerman corridor, 619 vehicles to be added because of this current development. West of Tequesta is 270 units. Add the LPN, 444 additional units. With the rumored 300, add another 540. So you're looking at adding over 1,000 units of traffic in that infrastructure and really not addressing what needs to happen. I'm not against development. I know it's going to happen. It needs to happen. But this is borderline irresponsible. Thank you.
Pam Briggs to be followed by Ellen Hicks.
Name and address for record, please, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Pam Briggs. My address is 1213 Conservancy Drive East in Tallahassee. Would it be all right if I passed out a packet of pictures for you?
Yes, ma'am.
I stand before you tonight to present a clear picture of the 3 of the 4 lake protection nodes, or the LPNs, that were created in 2015. You will see that there is a distinct difference with the 4th node at Bannerman and Bullheadley Road. In the information that I emailed to the county attorney, Herb Thiele, I also included the aerial photos and current photos of the LPN that I've just passed out to you. You will see that the LPNs located at Highway 27 North and Sessions Road, Highway 27 North and Capitol Circle Northeast at Old Bainbridge Road, and Highway 27 North and Fred George Road are all highly commercialized intersections that were developed and established long before 2015, when the LPNs were created. All have 4-lane streets, sidewalks, and are designed for commercial use. All have mass transit locations. The LPN at Bannerman and Bull Headley is not highly commercialized. It is not highly developed, does not have a 4-lane street, has minimal sidewalks, and is not designed for commercial use. These examples clearly demonstrate that to allow the application of the LPN as structured presents a development intensity that is both incompatible and inconsistent with the character and nature of the Bannerman-Bull Headley area. It is clear that the LPN at Bannerman and Bull Headley Roads was created in the comprehensive plan with the expectation that a rezone is done by right. We contend that a much broader review is required and is absolutely necessary to ensure that the rights of adjacent property owners are not trampled. In addition, I emailed the Leon County Planning Commission minutes that were dated November 7th of 2017 to the county attorney. I am referencing item number 5 from those minutes, which discusses changing the zoning classification from lake protection to lake protection node zoning. The subject property is located on the north side of Bannerman Road, approximately 750 feet from its intersection with Bull Headley, and it is almost directly across the street from this subject property at 1665 Bannerman Road. During this meeting, there was much discussion on the commissioners' concerns as to whether this was the appropriate timing for the development of this site. They also expressed their opinion to the lake protection nodes should develop from the inside to the outside. The Planning Commission found that although the property is eligible via the comprehensive plan for rezoning to LPN, the subject is not ripe for such at this time. If it was rezoned, there would be inappropriate land and incompatible land uses, densities and intensities, adverse impacts to traffic circulation, increased noise, and a reduction in the water quality of Lake Jackson.
Ma'am, could you wrap up your comments?
I can, thank you. I also emailed your county attorney. The petition from, at that day, was 958 residents. It is now 987 that are strongly opposing the rezoning of the subject property. The vision and implementation statement refers to, quote, essential planning with objectives and policies that protect and enhance the natural environment, water resources, the canopy roads, and residential neighborhoods. Therefore, unwise land use decisions and premature non-residential development is established residential areas can be seriously and permanently alter the character of a neighborhood.
Ma'am.
I'm closing. To approve this zoning change would not only conflict with this concept, it would disprove the fact that, quote, our comprehensive plan is a living document used every day in decisions made by local governments. Unless we adhere to the entire comprehensive plan, it is not a living document. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Ellen Hicks, to be followed by Tommy Pipkin.
My name is Ellen Hicks. I live at 10097 Bull Headley Road. I've lived on Bull Headley Road for 33 years. My husband and I married in Colorado, and we spent 3 months on the road going from East Coast to West Coast, and we picked Tallahassee to move to because of the quality of life. When we got here, we did the same thing. We researched, spent time looking at all the different areas of Tallahassee, and we picked the northeast area of Tallahassee to raise our children, to build our home, and to build our lives. And what you're about to do here today is about to destroy all of that. Changing the rezoning will destroy the quality of life that all of these people, or the majority of these people, have come to hope and build on in that area. We don't need an assisted living facility on every corner next to the mattress store. You've got several that are in the area that are new development. You've got Mr. Burton's facility that is being built on Deer Lake. You've got all that going in. We don't need another. I know you think we're old, but I don't need an assisted living facility. Thank you very much. Bannerman is predominantly a residential road. It is not a northeast connector. It was not developed as a capital circle with commercial development. There are multiple private driveways on Bannerman Road, houses that go off of Bannerman Road. So my question is, when you decide to widen the road, are you going to go in and tell these people that, oh, well, we're going to take your property so we can build a wider road? And what about the little black community on Meridian and Bannerman? Are you going to go in and tell them, oh, well, we want to do commercial development, so you've got to move. We're going to take your property so we can build a bigger road and put more houses. And then you're going to jack up the property values where they can no longer afford to live there. I don't think that's fair. Construction does not equal economic development. It's time to slow down and adjust our approach. This development is not ripe. There is no infrastructure in place to support this. I'm not against development. If this property was developed along the current zoning lines, it would be fine. You would have a development that is in compatibility with the existing homes. I remember when they built Summerbrook. I remember when they built Killearn Lakes. And they have adhered to what the people in the Northeast want. We live there. You don't. And you're forcing this on us, and it is not going to improve our quality of life. The results of the Economic Development Community Survey were clear. Our priorities are preserve our natural environment, provide greater financial stability, work opportunities, and a higher quality of life for all residents. And unwise land use decisions and premature non-residential development is established in established residential areas can seriously and permanently alter a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tommy Pipkin, to be followed by Charles Messing.
Name and address for record, please, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Tommy Pipkin. I live at 7140 Wooded Gorge Road. I am a resident of Summerbrook and currently serve on the Summerbrook Property Owners Association as president. And I can assure you that our board, along with an overwhelming majority of our property owners, are adamantly opposed to the rezoning request on many levels. Please do not misunderstand, and someone said this just a few minutes ago, we are not opposed to responsible growth and development. We are opposed to this rezoning request because of the density of construction allowed under the Lake Protection Node, which would allow up to 300,000 square feet of commercial space Think about it, that's like 3 Walmarts, and would increase the number of dwelling units from 16 to 247 in apartment buildings up to 4 stories high. This density of construction is certainly not consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods or with the comprehensive plan. The vision statement found in the comprehensive plan repeatedly states that preserving and protecting existing neighborhoods is of paramount concern. Yet our neighborhoods are under constant assault from large developers whose interests are being advanced over the thousands of hardworking, tax-paying, and voting citizens that are being harmed by this reckless growth. This node is not consistent with the other nodes, as has already been pointed out. Unlike the other nodes, which are located on major thoroughfares and in already commercial areas, this node is located on a 2-lane road with no viable commercial activity other than one convenience store, and no public transportation is available. Walking or riding a bicycle on Bannerman Road? Are you kidding me? That would be extremely dangerous and almost impossible. What is being portrayed as responsible or smart growth is simply not the case in this node. The design of the existing neighborhoods and the busy 2-lane road simply do not support this concept. The concept is irresponsible in this location because the end result would be disruptive to the adjacent communities and to those tax-paying, voting citizens who travel along Bannerman Road. The stated purpose of the comprehensive plan is to preserve, protect, and enhance the quality of life for all citizens. It also calls for orderly and responsible growth. What is going on in our area is neither responsible or orderly. I appeal to you, each and every one of you, the county commissioners, to act in a responsible manner and deny this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Charles Messing, to be followed by William Lessman.
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Charles Messing. I'm a 35-year resident of Killearn Lakes. I went to school at FSU, graduated with a BS in biology. Served with the Fish and Wildlife Commission as a research biologist for 34 years. First thing I learned when I came to Tallahassee is they love their trees and they love their lakes. I also had a side job for 30 years out here, and I have consulted with the homeowners associations in Killearn Lakes, in Golden Eagle, and in Summerbrook, trying to manage the aquatic plant growth in these lakes that have gone on for the last 30 years. The first 15 weren't too bad, but it's gotten worse lately. I also served on the peer review board of the study that reviewed the stormwater study in 2000. I served along with 6 scientists, 4 from Florida State University and from the Water Management District. We spent 6 months reviewing the details and running models to see if the high standards we chose were going to be sufficient to protect Bradfordville for the next 20 years. That was a difficult task. The reason it was so difficult is because the development standards of the comp plan says, Section 8.2, the comprehensive plan stipulates that the stormwater management plan shall protect, and this is important, and enhance the water quality of the surface water bodies in the Bradfordville area so that they can conform to the comp plan. ERD was commissioned to do the study, and this review group reviewed and submitted lots of comments to the staff and to the developers. We are in Appendix A, the review of the stormwater stuff, if you're interested in catching any of that information. Basically, the stormwater report concluded that the existing development through 2000 had already damaged most of the water bodies in Bradfordville. Because of that, these extreme standards, highest standards in the state of Florida, you should be proud of it, of a full catching, 4 inches of rain. At the time, they still may be the highest standards in Florida. But we also recognized that implementing these standards alone would not protect the waters and enhance them in Bradfordville area. So, quote from the book, from the study, we recognize that some initiatives must be taken to reduce the loadings from the existing stormwater sources if the comprehensive plan objective of protecting and enhancing the lake water quality in the Bradfordville sector area is to be attained. These high standards alone will not reduce the nutrients, enhance the lake quality, or reverse the degraded conditions in the lakes today. And finally, if I have time, the staff also recommend to the staff in the county that they recommend an aggressive water quality monitoring of these new standards for the next 5 to 10 years to determine if these standards really did do what the models said they would do. We modeled this. We took existing data, and we had hoped that we took steps to protect the water bodies in the Bradfordville area. So the question is, as my wife tells me, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it in. Before you vote on this, try to determine if these meet the standards of the water quality standards, and have you tested them? Did you look at the data for 5 to 10 years to see if they are protecting the lakes? I have some examples that the lakes aren't protected, but I'm out of time, so I will just leave you with this. If these new standards don't protect the lakes, and if the lakes quality is degraded since 2000, does that mean this plan would be consistent? The one thing the group did recognize is that less impervious space is more consistent with the plan than increasing impervious space. So I challenge you to review the information and let's not expand to more additional impervious space. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
William Lessman to be followed by David Depew.
My name is William Lessman. I live at 7114 Midland Pass, Tallahassee, Florida. Phase 1 of Summerbrook. I've been there for over 30 years. I'm here to speak against the rezoning. Again, as Tommy Pipkin said, I'm not against development. I think the current zoning is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I've heard speakers talk about following the rules, and this is not about following the rules. This is about changing the rules. Because if you followed the rules, you would go ahead and develop it based upon what its current zoning and land use is. There was also a talk about increasing housing. Well, you can increase housing on the current zoning. You don't have to change the zoning to increase housing in the area. But finally, let me talk about something that I actually may know something about, which is water quality. Some of you may know I retired from the city of Tallahassee. I was in charge for 30 years of water quality, helped start the City of Tallahassee Leon County Lakes program. And the lakes that are through Summerbrook protect Lake Jackson. They were designed and developed so that to handle the water that is coming from that development. And I can tell you, once the dam was removed from the Cawthorn property and the water started coming through our lakes, I can tell you, based upon my expertise, that the only thing saving our lakes is a beaver dam. That's it. And the city of, Summerbrook has spent many thousands of dollars every year maintaining those lakes and maintaining them for the benefit of Lake Jackson. I do not think that increasing the development as it's currently shown is beneficial to our community. And this is usually said to people in the service, but I just want to thank you all for your service.
Thanks, sir.
David Depew to be followed by Max Hurley.
Name and address for record, please.
Good evening. My name is David Depew. My address is 495 Grand Boulevard, Suite 206, Miramar Beach, 32550. I'm a land planner. I'm also principal with the firm of Morris Depew Associates. Been retained by Summerbrook Homeowners Association to review this request. You have already, I believe, in the record my report that was submitted late last week. I've taken a look at this request. I would tell you that I find three major deficiencies. One is in plan consistency. Second is with regard to compatibility and consistency with the Land Development Code. And third is with land use compatibility. The proposal that you're considering tonight before you, I find vague. It lacks the detail necessary for a proper evaluation. It creates uncertainty for the adjoining and proximate property owners, and as such, an approval would not, I believe, preserve, protect, and enhance the existing residential neighborhood that are adjoining and proximate to the subject property. It is inconsistent, as I indicated, with the comprehensive plan and does not implement the Land Development Code. It is not compatible, and I believe it is also contrary to the provisions of Chapter 163.3194 of the Florida statutes. I would point out something that's already been said by your staff as well as others. Just because they're eligible doesn't mean they're guaranteed. You need to look at all of the various provisions associated with this and the potential damage that can occur to this neighborhood. The potential for development on this site is enormous based on what is being requested before you. It adds 231 dwelling units to the area and potentially 386,250 square feet of non-residential use. According to Land Development Code Section 10.660 Sub 1 Sub 7, a rezoning to LPN will facilitate compatibility with nearby neighborhoods through buffers, transitioning, building mass, and scale, and through careful site design. There is nothing to demonstrate that in the request that is before you tonight. And before we get into the fact that this is going to be something that is going to be dealt with down the road, I would point out to you that you need to take a look at compatibility tonight, because that's one of the criteria in your own Land Development Code. And ask yourself whether compatibility is going to be served by doing this request. Policy 2.18 of the Comprehensive Plan actually anticipates development limitations and regulations applied to development. The addition of this potential development could add in excess of 11,000 daily trips to Bannerman, which is only a collector road and is not an arterial. That's a regional commercial center. That's what you're talking about putting on at Bull Headley and Bannerman. In conclusion, based on my analysis, the professional opinion I reached is that the application is deficient in its attempt to demonstrate compliance with the plan and the Land Development Code. I believe that the proper position for the board would be to find this proposed request inconsistent with your comprehensive plan, and that you not adopt the proposed ordinance and not amend the official zoning map based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law that have been presented as part of the material that I have presented on behalf of the Summerbrook Homeowners Association. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Max Hurley to be followed by Kathy Slayton.
About 5. Actually, 6.
Thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Max Hurley. I'm here on behalf of my client, the Summerbrook Property Owners Association. Before I get into our points here, I just wanted to make sure everyone in the room was clear about how many people were here for Summerbrook and against. So raise your hand if you are against the zoning. And I do want to just say that I think this is phenomenal. I'm really proud of the way the neighborhoods have come together on this, and I think that it shows a deeper level of community that people can make time in our very busy schedules to come to these meetings. So I want to outline what we already know the developer in this case, what their claims will be. So they'll say that it's consistent with the comp plan, and I think you all know the stance that we have, which is, of course, that it is inconsistent, and I feel like our legal counsel, as well as our civil engineers and lake consultants, have done a good job of explaining why it is inconsistent. The second is that any issues that are limited to the current status of the property will be resolved in the site plan process. So I agree that many issues could potentially be resolved in the site plan process if you all were to approve a rezoning. However, the 7 of you will never be able to make this decision again. This will go to a Type 2 site plan, and it will be worked out in the ARMs, and it will be worked out in the DRCs. And none of you all will serve. This is the only action, this is the only vote that any of you all will ever take on this item. So, because that process, the ARMs and the DRCs, tend to be about binary compliance, either you are compliant or you are not compliant. Of course, there are situations where within an ARM or a DRC, the developer or the neighborhood comes together to make concessions. There's no legally mandated mechanism to demand a concession within the ARM or the DRC. It's all entirely voluntary. And keeping that in mind, this developer is not one who is particularly known for his modesty. So I would suggest that this is the one decision that is really going to determine the future of that neighborhood. I'm really glad that one of our residents, Pam Briggs, had spoke earlier, because I think it's something that bears repeating, that there are 4 lake protection nodes, and Bannerman and Bull Headley is clearly the outlier from them. North Monroe is on all 3 of the other nodes. So this is the only node that is not on North Monroe, and as has already been pointed out, there was already widespread commercial activity on every other node prior to that. So I want to end how I started, which was really thanking the neighborhoods for coming out here. We had over 1,000 petitions. This is actually a pretty complex thing to go through, and I know that people have things to be doing that they'd rather be doing, like enjoying their neighborhood. So once again, we're just concerned that this will create the concrete jungle, and it is entirely inappropriate and inconsistent with the comp plan. Fast-tracking this project to the site plan will doom it to the ARMs and the DRCs, which are totally binary in their compliance. And if you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Kathy Slayton, to be followed by Alan Wise.
Name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kathy Slayton. I'm a resident of Summerbrook. I'd rather not give my specific address,
yes.
Just out of concern for my personal safety. I come to you tonight as a mother of a young child at Hawksrise Elementary School. Commissioner Jackson, your wife, works there, and she does a great job every day serving that school. I volunteered at that school for the entire last year that my son was in kindergarten, not because it was financially convenient for me, but because I chose to do that and serve my son's school as a mother. I'm sure Beth did not come home every day and say, you know what, I can't wait for that school to be overcrowded. We worked very hard in the cafeteria every day, and I saw how hard she worked, and I would hate to see her school turn into a overcrowded school that cannot be managed. But despite all that, it's not really about me. And it's not really about Beth or any of the other parents. It's about the children who are already at that school, who have a very consistent teaching style. The teachers are wonderful there, and I would hate to see a influx of residential and commercialized property and opportunity come into this area that's going to impact my son's school. I am here as a protector of him, and as a mother, I have a right to do that. And you know what? To the gentleman who said, you're just a bunch of angry old people, you know what? I'm angry because I'm a parent, and wait till you become a parent. Because if you don't have a child at that school, you can't understand what it's like to even drive on a rainy day and try to make it and that's just when it rains. There hasn't been any influx to the population to that neighborhood yet. So you guys try it. So my motivation here tonight is as a mother for my son. And so I have to sit back and I have to turn the coin and say, well, what's the motivation here for you guys? Why would you vote any other way? Honestly, think about that. Because it's even not about you. It's about the children in this community and what that means to them. You could say, well, you know what? I don't have any kids that go to that school. Or, you know what? My kids are grown and they're married. Or, even better yet, my kids go to a private school. So how does it impact me? Or maybe your loyalties lie elsewhere. I would hope not. Because you are serving us. And I expect you to do that as a parent. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Alan Wise, to be followed by Ken Metcalf.
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alan Wise, 1590 Village Square Boulevard. I am the applicant's agent. I'm going to fast forward here through a few things. We've heard a lot tonight about water quality. We've heard a lot about stormwater. Again, these aren't items that typically are discussed at a rezoning, but this property has some very unique instances that I want to point out. Again, first of all, stormwater analysis isn't required at the rezoning stage. That occurs at site plan. However, I want to just walk through a few items with you. State of Florida requirements, as you've heard speakers speak to this evening, as well as you know, one of the leading states in the nation for stormwater quality standards, stormwater development standards. Leon County, again, as you've heard this evening, is one of the has some of the more stringent stormwater design requirements of all the counties in the state. On top of that, you guys have adopted lake protection requirements, which increase water quality standards, as well as the Bradfordville study area requirements. In a moment, I'm going to show you a map. Actually, I'll go ahead and do it now. In all of Leon County, there's only about a dozen undeveloped parcels that exist in both the Lake Protection Zoning District and the Bradfordville study area. The most stringent stormwater requirements in the state will occur in this green shaded box that is in this proximity. So as we're talking about, stormwater moving forward, development is going to ruin downstream. This is the most stringent stormwater requirements that exist. This property will be subject to those requirements. Also related to stormwater, at some of the previous hearings we've heard issues raised by the community about existing water quality. I'd like to point out that the clear cutting of this property historically has been agricultural, particularly silvicultural. It was a tung oil plantation before it was planted pines. So clear cutting was part of the agricultural activities that occurred on the property. But in the last couple months, again, since we've heard from the residents about some of their concerns, we hired a biologist to go perform water quality samples on the Coffin property, which again is outside of the subject of this rezoning. I want to point that out as well. Immediately upstream of Preservation Road, Lake Alyssa, Lake Shelley, and Lake Carr. And what we found was, as you leave, this graph shows as you travel from the Coffin property towards the west, the Coffin Pond has the highest water quality, or has optimal water quality, and then as you move down through Lake Alyssa has poor water quality, and then back up to Carr Lake. With that, again, I'm the applicant's agent, so at the end of this, if you have any questions, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Ken Metcalf, to be followed by Leslie Murkowski.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I do. Good evening. My name is Ken Metcalf. I'm the Director of Planning with Stearns, Weaver, Miller in Tallahassee. I've been retained by the applicant to present my expert opinions on compatibility, on land use consistency, on the code requirements. And so I want to walk through the rezoning requirements. I've submitted my report as part of the record, my consistency evaluation analysis. I've also submitted my resume. So again, your staff went through these 5 criteria. These are what's required for a rezoning. It's not, this is not a PUD. This is a straightforward
rezoning application. Sometimes we call it a Euclidean zoning application. That simply means that if you meet the criteria of the comprehensive plan and the code, then the rezoning should be approved. So let's look at the comprehensive plan policies. Probably the most important one here is policy 2.2.18. I mean, I've done this for 30 years. I can tell you I've never seen a code designation for a rezoning where the comprehensive plan actually gives a site-specific description of exactly where the zoning change will occur. And that's what you have here. Policy 2.218 describes geographically exactly where this rezoning is supposed to occur. What we've heard tonight is a lot of objections. Really, they sort of fall in two categories. One category is, well, we disagree with the policy decision that this board made 3 years ago in setting up this framework for this lake protection node. There's a process where affected parties can challenge comprehensive plan amendments. When the county adopted that plan amendment, those folks could have challenged, and they didn't. They're asking you now, 3 years later, to reject a rezoning request that's completely consistent with the direction that the board set 3 years ago. And I might add, that was after 2 years of study before that plan amendment was adopted, putting policy 2.2.18 into your comprehensive plan. And so you see the criteria. It lists this particular node. This is another policy that's basically, if you look at the language in B, says we're going to rely on our zoning districts and the guidance from our comprehensive plan to determine where zoning should be applied. In this case, I mean, it's really a no-brainer. I don't use that term very often, but that's the case because it's a very site-specific description in the policy. Finally, we've heard some arguments that there are road issues, that there's concurrency concerns. That will be addressed at the site plan stage. Your policy 1.3.3 doesn't require concurrency at the preliminary development order stage. It simply doesn't. And the applicant has waived his rights to any vesting based on this decision from a concurrency perspective. We've reviewed a number of policies that were presented in the report that was submitted on behalf of Summerbrook POA. None of these policies apply. None of these policies apply to a rezoning. Several apply to considering how to approach the guidance in your comprehensive plan and how to approach lake protection. It's not a policy framework that's designed to apply at the rezoning stage. All of those decisions about whether the node was a good idea as a strategy in terms of lake protection, that was all done 3 years ago as part of the initial policy strategy.
Please wrap up your comments, sir.
I also want to point out that some of these policies apply to the site development review process. Again, that will occur at the next stage. You heard the previous speaker mention statute 163.3194. It's important to recognize the three main points for consistency: land uses, densities, intensities were consistent with the policy. Also, I wanted to point out that all of these policies that people are questioning as to whether this project would be consistent, those were all addressed in the initial evaluation of the comprehensive plan. Under the statute, under section 163.3177, parent 2, the state reviewed the comprehensive plan amendment when it was adopted 3 years ago and determined it was consistent with all of the requirements for lake protection. That determination's already been made.
Sir.
I'll wrap up very quickly. We're consistent with the code. The rezoning sets out the same criteria as the comprehensive plan policy, same locational criteria. It's important to understand from a compatibility perspective, the idea is that they're going to rely on the regulatory framework that's been adopted in the code in order to achieve compatibility. transition of land uses and so forth.
Thank you.
Finally, the one point that I think is important to call out, because we view this a little differently than your staff, is on changed conditions. We do have a situation where the entire area has developed over time, the entire area has developed over time as single family. That is the changed condition over time. That's the basis for now coming in with the node.
Thank you.
You see these areas.
I can't allow you more time, sir. Seriously, I'm sorry.
Okay.
1 house per 2 acres. Have a cookie on your way out.
Sir, I can't allow you more time. You have to walk away.
All right.
Next speaker.
Leslie Markevsky, to be followed by Ben Wilkinson.
Thanks, sir. Name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Hello, Leslie Marchevsky.
Sorry about that.
9024 Broken Lance Drive. And before I say anything, I just want to say, don't be rude, y'all. Everyone has time, and just be nice.
Thank you.
Okay. And mostly, I wanted to come up here because there were a couple comments, and I just wanted to dispel the myth that opposition to the rezoning has anything to do with ageism or classism or anything. I'm a first-generation American. I'm from Miami, grew up in Miami, Florida, and I've owned 2 homes on the northeast side, the first of which I bought when I was 24. I was a second-year teacher at Sale High School at the time, and I didn't have any help from family or anything. I did it on my own with my teacher's salary. And we moved from Summerbrook across Bannerman Road so that our 3 boys could run around on some nice 2 acres of green space. And we're really enjoying the country life. I'm from Miami, my husband's from Detroit, so for us 2 acres, we feel like we're farmers, basically. So we really love living out there. We love our children growing up in the kind of environment that we didn't have growing up in large cities. Just being able to play outside and drink from a spigot, which is something we had to kind of adjust to. But the neighborhood boys are helping our boys adjust nicely. But that's basically what I wanted to say, is that I'm living proof that you can be a millennial and a humble teacher and a minority, and you can own a home in the north side without changing zoning and without ruining the environment in the northeast side. Thank you.
Ben Wilkinson, to be followed by our final speaker, Gary Hunter.
Good afternoon. I'm Ben Wilkinson, 3520 Thomasville Road. I was born and raised in Tallahassee, and more specifically grew up on Pigeon Pond in Bradfordville, back when it was rural, when you could ride your bike to Brayburg's, and there were 500 of us, I think, not the 50,000 that was referenced earlier. The bottom line, the growth has come, it's occurred, and we all are scared of change. We're scared of what we don't understand, but the bottom line is the county has, as Herb Teal and I stared across each other this lectern for 6 years in the Bradfordville mess, we've got the highest stormwater standards, I think, in the state. We've got everything from design standards, environmental standards, and a great staff that will ensure that the developers adhere to that. All of these properties and neighborhoods, I understand the concern, but I think it's important to remember when I grew up out there, the Summerbrook was the Smith family farm. Oxbottom was as well. Cloran Lakes was a plantation. We used to hunt and fish and ride our bikes and never saw anybody. It came, the development at the commercial node in Bradfordville, I think was mentioned as the end of the world if that occurred. I think it's also safe to say most of the people that live up there shop at Publix, shop at Target, enjoy the restaurants. It can be done right. The developers in question, there's been some personal attacks I think are unwarranted. I have done business with this group for many years, oftentimes on a handshake. They do back up what they bring to the table and have always been very honorable. I am here to speak in support of it. I think that given the standards we have and the staff we have and the group that's trying to do this, this is not a bad thing. It's the new guy in, that's scary, but you shouldn't shut the door behind you once you arrive at your little piece of paradise. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is our final speaker. As the crowd, as well as the commission remembers, this is the attorney for the applicant. We're going to give him 5 minutes, and then we'll go straight to commissioner discussion. Sir, as you go, remember please to address the comments made by, I guess we'll call it the opposing counsel earlier, and Commissioner Proctor's questions that he had as well. Thank you.
I'll start with that. Again, my name is Gary Hunter. I'm the attorney for the developer, Mr. Gazvini. I'm for the applicant, the Cawthon family. I'll tell you, I learned something tonight. I didn't realize how old Benji Wilkinson was until he just sat up here and told us. You probably had to ride your bike to school, Benji. I feel sorry for you, but we appreciate his comments. I had no idea he'd be here tonight. And I agree with them. They were well stated. This community has changed over the years. This part of this community is changing. You all, let's think about what's been attacked tonight, really, what the complaint has been. The complaint has been that this board and your staff have made a bad decision. You made a bad decision in 2013 when you decided that the lake protection area needed some nodes to allow for something different than big lot, single-family residential. But everybody on this board, I think, except Commissioner Jackson, voted for that, only because Commissioner Jackson wasn't here and didn't have a chance to do it at the time. But every one of you made that decision. In 2015, when your staff came back to you with a proposal on what to do with lake protection and how to develop that node, everybody on this dais, every one of you, again, except Commissioner Jackson, only because he wasn't here, supported that decision. You supported 4 nodes, and you said these are the only areas within this very important part of our community where we're going to allow something other than big lot, single-family residential development. And indeed, you adopted a comprehensive plan policy that identified, I've been doing zoning and development work all over Florida for 27 years, based out of Tallahassee, but my work for my law firm has allowed me to do work all over the state. And as Mr. Metcalf said earlier, it is almost unprecedented to have a rezoning application come in and be asking for the rezoning to occur in an area where there's a circle that the board has said this is where that rezoning occurs, and this is that case. And not only did you then adopt the lake protection node for this area, you adopted the lake protection node land development code and put a second map in your land development code that implemented the land use map that you had adopted for this area. So you have voted 3 times to support exactly what is in front of you tonight. All of you, except for Commissioner Jackson, again, because he wasn't up here when that vote occurred. You then, less than a year ago, voted for a rezoning to lake protection node directly across the street from this site. So you've rezoned another parcel directly across Bannerman Road in this node to lake protection node. This board voted to do it. Your planning commission, I heard earlier one of the residents, who, by the way, I have, as I know you do, tremendous respect for. They care about their homes. They care about their community. This outcry and concern you all hear all the time, and it's not unique to Tallahassee. I hear it every community in Florida. It's the story of Florida, right? We all move to Florida, and there's 360,000+ people a year moving to Florida. Well, they've got to go somewhere. And you've put a plan in place in this community to direct them where they should go. And that's inside your urban service area where there are urban services, and that's exactly what you've directed happen in this case. But we heard complaints about a planning commission decision on the property across the street. What the speaker didn't say was what the planning commission did for this site. 5-1, the planning commission, by the way, a planning commission which never recommends a rezoning hardly ever, at least in my familiarity with them, recommended this one. They realized that you had done all this legwork, your staff had done all this legwork, and identified this spot as the place for this mix of uses, this different than what's next door. There's no doubt that the zoning that we're asking for permits something different than Summerbrook. It permits something different than what's down Bull Headley. It permits something different than what's in Killearn Lakes, because you decided you needed that. And you were wise to do that, because when you put just houses, guess what happens? You get traffic problems on Bannerman Road, because everybody's got to go all the way to Publix or all the way down to Walmart on Thomasville Road or further to get basic services. And so you, as a county commission, decided you eliminated the opportunity to put commercial anywhere other than these 4 areas in the lake protection node. And so, you know, we can sit here today and be Monday morning quarterback on how poor a decision you all made 3 years ago and 5 years ago, and how inadequate your staff report is, because I've heard that. Your staff's got a 15-page analysis. They rebutted point by point Mr. Depew is an expert witness for our firm, my law firm, often, and he's very good at what he does. He got this one wrong. Your staff got it right. We are asking again for you to approve the rezoning. It meets the criteria in your code. It's consistent with your comprehensive plan. I'm happy to answer any questions. We appreciate your consideration. We know it's been a long night, and we thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Commissioner, I have no more speakers. I have no commissioner. Oh, there you go. Commissioner Deloge.
So we met, that's 3 months ago now, I guess, when this last came up, and I kind of led the charge and said, at the time, I didn't think I was ready for this. And primarily, the one thing I felt like I had a little bit of a handle on was transportation. And we all knew that there was a shot at advanced funding some of the Bannerman Road. And we watched as the development at Bannerman Crossing came through. And if you remember, we walked hand in hand with the developer, making sure the roundabout got done, making sure the turn lanes got done, so that the whole development didn't come crashing in, and then we had to do the road. So the developer was very cognizant of that. So we did the blueprint meeting, and we made the decision to advance fund all the way to Tequesta. So that's cooked, it's on the books. I'd also like to point out, and maybe this is news to most people, part of that is also going to be effectively a St. Mark's trail or a bike trail that's going to run the entire length of Bannerman, okay? Which will then, in the not too distant future, be able to hook up with the other across the street at Orchard Pond. So the people in that community are going to have effectively a 10-mile St. Mark's trail, 5 on Bannerman, 5 on Orchard Pond. And that's going to be a bike pedestrian trail specifically that runs the length there. So that's done. That's going to happen. We also asked staff, could you come back and find a creative way to potentially finance the Tequesta to Boheadley section? And I think there's a shot at that. I think the Tequesta piece, and based on the traffic analysis, knocks down the overwhelming majority of the issues, because the bulk of the people are going into Killearn Lakes. And once we can open that up, I think we've really done our job. We've heard a lot about water quality, and this is one of those rare instances where it's lake protection and it's a Bradfordville stormwater standard. It's the toughest in the state. And there is no getting around that, and they're going to have to really thread a needle as far as how they do that. The density, as was pointed out, we had 10 or better than 10 public meetings to talk about this node concept, and we beat it and beat it and beat it. And I'm not going to claim to be a land use expert or a comp plan expert, but we all sat here and agreed that was the way this should play out. And lastly, I mean, I look at Bannerman Crossing, and I heard a lot of the same things early on, because I was in the middle of this, and it's my district. And Rick Carney, to his credit, the developer stepped up, worked with the homeowners, and I get calls all the time now. People quietly say, hey, if this is going to be something like that, or if you're going down the same path, I'm good with that. Because you know what? I got more restaurants out there now. I got more things that I can do. I grew up like Benji. I moved to Bradfordville in the mid-'80s when Thomasville was a 2-lane road. Leon County had 160,000 people. We've got just shy of 300,000 people now. And the people go somewhere. And frankly, they're going to the Northeast because it is a desirable place. We have good schools. We have good stuff going on. And I don't think this is going to destroy it, but I think, as somebody else pointed out, it's not fair to say, I've got a house and we don't want you to have one. So I'll make, and the DCA secretary, the DCA secretary weighed in and said,
I asked that you be the same for us.
Leon,
say things that you agree with, but we listen.
Leon County has some of the toughest development standards in the state, and that's not by mistake. Like I said, there's 100,000 people that have come here in the last 35, 40 years. We are voted. We're up here to represent the 270, 280,000 people in this county. And as much as it hurts that there's a group in Summerbrook that does not like this, I think a lot of it is maybe that they don't like what they don't understand to a degree. And I have to rely on the experts that we have and the planning staff And so I would make the motion for option 1 and go ahead and get it on the table for discussion.
Option 1's been moved by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Lindley. I have no more commissioners in queue to speak. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those who spoke and those who didn't, thank you all for spending the evening with us. If you've been watching anything in recent months, I think we've had a series of the most participation at the most public hearings that I've seen in many years. So just appreciate your time. And as the chairman said, there's always going to be a vote going one way or another. So these are difficult situations. For me, I just have to look at the rules, and I think this is where we were in December and where we were previous. It is a delicate balance to have rules and regulations and property rights. I mean, that's a balance that any community is going to have. You don't want us, no one wants us telling them how to build a house or anything like that, but we have to think about this in the big picture. So the node design with this, I mean, as we've all referenced, Commissioner Deloge, you just did, the most incredible, stringent water quality regulations in this area. It was a long process. And for this particular decision tonight, that's what we have to base it on, is whether or not we're following the rules. I said the same thing in December when we had the other quasi-judicial. So to me, that is the issue. And someone did mention that conversation, and some of the dialogue we had at the time was about looking at this to see if we got it right. I think, I mean, quite frankly, the images of the different nodes is one of the most compelling things, I'm not sure where you are, Pam, that I saw tonight. And my take on that and trying to think back, it was anticipation of the Blueprint Project and others. I mean, there was a distinction with this one intersection, but there's also future development plans, and now we've got that road advanced. So for me, it is following the rules and very much encouraging the developer and everyone to work with the neighborhoods on all of the various other issues, and I believe you will going forward. The only last thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chair, is that, and I've said this repeatedly, you all have heard this a lot, I'm not sure if everyone in the room has, but our comp plan expires in 2030. We have a robust comp plan. This is going to be a conversation, and as you say, Commissioner Deloge, our population is growing, we're attracting new people. I would encourage all of you to stay involved. I mean, you're here at this point, and there are rules that bind us, but there are comp plan amendments every cycle, and different people can suggest them, and we bring them forward. I would love to see this many people engaged on the real technical stuff in comp plan, and that helps set the rules in advance. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for showing up.
Thank you. Commissioner Daley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. These decisions are not easy. They are not taken lightly, because one thing about Tallahassee, no matter how big or how small it is, we know everybody on both sides of the issue, and we're all friends. I've got dear friends and family that live out there and live in Summerbrook and are very concerned. I know people that are in part of the development team. I've got the utmost respect for them as well, and they are dear friends as well. In my mind, it's not an issue per se about the development or the rezoning itself. It's about the public commitment that this board has moving forward. And there's one part of the comp plan that we have not addressed, but it's the same point that I brought up back when I was in opposition to the vote in December, which passed on a 5-2 vote, and I was on the short end of that stick. And that is our responsibility to the public when it comes to public infrastructure. Commissioner Deloge, I really do appreciate you moving the ball forward, and I wholeheartedly support it. And I do think that Bannerman Road needs to be widened. And I do think that if we could, it should be, although not all of us agree on exactly how to do this, I think we should take into consideration all the way to Meridian Road eventually. I do believe that's the growth. Where I think I differ from this body is I think that step needs to be taken first. In my mind, it's not necessarily is it a good development or is it a bad development. I personally think that the development team does do a good product, and I do like their product. But that's not the question in my mind today. The question in my mind today is what comes first. And in my mind, what comes first is our public commitment of widening Bannerman, putting in the proper infrastructure. For those reasons, I will not be able to support the motion on the table, and I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Commissioner Proctor.
Chairman, I've heard a lot of comments that are somewhat shaded by sociology, and there's interest in property values declining, investments losing value. There's concern with, which is economics, which is all of our concern. Growth, moving very, very fast. And the economics, of course, which there's been no calculation of how much future development there would render to the coffers of the public. The issue of schools and school makeup and who will the children be that might compromise learning potential of children there was lifted up. And the issue of blueprint and advanced funding for Bannerman Road to be widened. And that when I look back to our notes of November of 2013, it was our recommendation then that we direct staff to develop and bring back a new lake protection node zoning district for the lake protection land use category that allows non-residential uses and higher density housing while requiring the lake protection stormwater standards. So we got the 4-inch standard. We directed staff in 2013 November to seek higher density housing, and we also asked staff to allow for non-residential uses that would be clustered in this node. We told in item element D to direct staff to coordinate with the city and bring back a potential common cluster development option for both the incorporated and unincorporated areas within lake protection that also incentivizes use of the cluster option. That's pretty strong medicine, because there we're binding and rather combining our energies with the city, and we're creating synergy with the city. That is, two governments, we've aligned focus that these areas would be clustered regions. And then we have all the way down to L, but is there a footprint? Are there tracks already laid in the sand that this focus for this area and how far back and just exactly how much paper validates, verifies, and walks our own decisions backward over time? I got it all right here in front of me. So I am persuaded by the record which we have been marching for collectively for a period of time, even soliciting the city's effort to walk jointly with us. And I don't see anything in these records that where there's been objection or foot dragging on the city's part. So our staff has been compliant to our requests. We have a great staff. But what bothers me tonight is this notion of advanced funding Bannerman Road, which does feel to me like a knife in the back. And when you're talking about the blueprint projects, I'm bewildered as to the process, the when, the where, and exactly outside of what sunshine meeting did Bannerman this occur. So Commissioner Daley's objection tonight ain't on no point. His point is on the road. And until he gets Bannerman and widen the road, I don't want to hear no evil, see no evil. I don't want to talk about it. And that's a pretty good position. But that was supposed to happen in 2037. So to leverage and strong arm a commitment or a conversation or engagement with these issues, short of having a road that was scheduled to 2037, gee, that's a big ask. And what warning Commissioner Lindley, who shares my district, and Commissioner Maddox, is that I want $12 million. I want $12 million for the fairground. And Commissioner Jackson, I'm glad that you're here tonight, because people are saying we don't want development. The majority of these folk don't want it. And you and I are, this is just amazing, because we want it and can't get it. And we've been trying to get a fairground, a public piece of property owned by this body, and we got it on the books. In fact, there's a longer record that backs up, has been studied, and we've vetted, and we've actually voted on it by the entire public of the county, that the fairground should be modernized. And when I looked at the list of possibilities and all the goodies, restaurants, medical, dental offices, daycare, religious centers. I mean, this is a long, impressive list in Table 1, photography, music, art. This is impressive. I would love to have the problems that you got. I ain't got this. I've been trying for a little while to convince this body that some of this kind of goodies could go. It's all in its own Table 1, page 6 is right here. Okay. I want some of this. I just want the fairground, you all, not to have outhouses, and that we could modernize and bring it to the 21st century. I'm begging the Board of County Commissioners to get some bathrooms, indoor plumbing on a public facility that we own. And this right here is begging not to have. Y'all don't want. Please don't bring automotive retail. Please don't bring government offices and lodging and all this stuff, restaurants and all like that. This is good. So I have voted in previous years supporting this journey forward. And it irks me, and I'm glad tonight that the Bannerman Road issue is not tied to this other, we've not tied up those things. But I've been on record, I have sat on this dais to defend 28 lawsuits in that 4-inch stormwater thingy. And this room is not even half as intense. I mean, this room is relative to them 28 lawsuits and that crowd of folk. Vince, it ain't even a crowd here tonight. And the temperature on a scale of 1 to 10, this is about a 2 compared to what we experienced then. But this commission marched forward, and we defended 28 times for this area to develop, but to develop with a 4-inch storm standard, which is Herculean. And in defending this right, that vision, that this was the vision that we saw. This is what everybody fought for. This is what the money went down for. And now to pull back on all of them fights and all of that stuff, it was argued a long time ago. So this is just an itty-bitty, it came to pass that this little project came out of a huge multi-tiered fight. But it was not a road that went in place to facilitate it. What was argued and duked out was a 4-inch storm water standard. That was the fight. If you're going to get it, it got to be at a 4-inch storm, and all of that happened, it occurred. And in achieving that 4-inch standard, thus the green light occurred for the rest of this, but Panama was not tied to it. I have put a lot into, have heard a whole lot, wonderful views over the years and time, and that this is just a very small, this comes to fruition as a result of the residual impacts from those fights. Okay. I understand and empathize the interests of everybody in this room. But Herb, I need to know from a legal context, it was challenged. I heard attorneys stand up and say that we dropped the ball, we skipped some things, the compatibility issue was lifted up. What did we do? What have we done wrong? What have we done that would disallow this commission to sleep well tonight, legally?
I don't think you've done anything wrong.
Okay. And the issue tonight is that, from what I'm able to discern, is that we got a comprehensive plan. The comp plan was in 2015, and tonight simply a zoning change that complements what the comp plan change was in 2015. Have I misunderstood something?
No, sir.
So that this step tonight is a sequential step that subsequent to the 2015 comp plan, where the board intention and signal for this piece of property to achieve this, and tonight we're following it. We've baked the cake, we're just putting the icing on it, the cake that's come out of the oven. Is that accurate? I mean, that's not a legal analogy.
I don't do baking really well.
At all?
No.
Nick doesn't either, don't feel that.
Yeah. Commissioner, I think you have testimony that you heard tonight and documents in your agenda that would allow you to dispute what the planning department found. You've had expert witness testimony that finds that it is not consistent, that it is not, it's premature, if you would. It's not compatible at the present time. So I don't want you to feel like I'm telling you that you're compelled. A rezoning is just that. You have to find those criteria, and you need to find that those criteria have been met now, as opposed to those criteria might be met later. And so you have evidence in the record to go with a yes or a no vote. It just depends on how much weight you provide the evidence that you heard.
So there's no staff recommendation, as this is a quasi-judicial hearing. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Chairman, I yield the floor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vice Chair.
I just wanted one comment. It is humbling to have this many people come out in concern for their neighborhoods and for their communities and their children, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. This, like a lot of our meetings in the past month, has been a long one, but anytime you have people passionate about their own causes, what's happening within their own community, it's worth hearing what they have to say. And so I appreciate each and every person who came out here tonight, whether you were for or against on one side or the other, for coming out and letting us know how you feel about this proposal for a zoning change that is in front of us. I appreciate those who were polite during other speakers' time. I know it's sometimes hard to hear a opinion opposite of your own, but it's a true testament to who you are to be able to hear those things and take those things in. Commissioners, it's been a long few months, man. Commissioner Deloge, I appreciate your motion, and given what the county attorney has said, I'm just going to be very frank. I'll be supporting that motion based off of the fact that staff recommendation has found nothing that is contrary to what would allow us to do this. I wonder on the opposite side if we decided not to, knowing that there were no findings of fact that we shouldn't, what the other side of it would be. It's pointed out, these decisions, a large part of this decision, as Commissioner Proctor said, and I think another speaker said, were made years ago when we put those 4 places as future nodes. But I'm glad each and every one of you here today to tell us how you feel about it. That being said, we'll move now to a vote.
What's the motion?
The motion on the floor is for staff recommendation. Made by Commissioner Deloge, seconded by Commissioner Lindley. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. We'll move now to item number 26.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, item number 26 seeks board consideration to utilize a professional consultant to conduct a comprehensive human services needs assessment. Commissioner, this, you may recall, comes to you as a result of the Alice report and the MOU with the City of Tallahassee to establish your CHSP process.
We still have business before the commission. As you leave, you could leave quietly. You can have those conversations outside. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, based on direction received by the board, final recommendations will be implemented for the next two CHSP grant cycles beginning on October 1st, 2020. Staff recommends options 1 and 2, and we do not have any speakers on this item.
Staff recommendation to move by Commissioner Lindley. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Dozier. I have no commissioners in queue to speak. Commissioner Dozier. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. County Administrator, thank you. I'm thrilled this is moving forward. It is a joint RFP with the city. Will the CHSP staff from both city and county be managing the contracts? Will it be county management? Maybe I missed that. It's been a long day.
That's correct. It will be jointly managed.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item number 27.
Commissioners, this item seeks your ratification of the June 19th fiscal year budget workshop. Typically, Commissioners, as you know, the property appraiser provides two property value estimates, one on June 1st and one on July 1. However, this year, as we noted in your revised information, your additional information, the property appraiser's office was required by Department of Revenue to utilize a different methodology in establishing commercial values. So instead of the $775,000 increase in property collections included in the original item, that number is now $1.1 million. What we're recommending, Commissioners, since you all approved your tentative budget consistent with the original agenda item, the recommendation is to increase the homestead reserve by $1.1 million. That will bring that to a total of 2.1 in that reserve account. Again, this reserve, Commissioners, I'll just remind you, was established to offset the potential impact to property taxpayers if the November 2018 additional homestead exemption passes on the 2018 referendum. So with that, Commissioners, as part of the item, the board also sets the maximum countywide and EMS millage rates for next year. At your public hearings in September, the board can lower those millage rates but cannot increase them at that time. Commissioners, we're recommending options 1 through 7, and we have no speakers on this item.
Motion been made by Commissioner Dozier for staff recommendations, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. Commissioner Proctor, you have the floor.
And Commissioners, I've been all in on this budget. I've been through several sit-down meetings with us, and I think that this budget falls short, and I think that what we have to and ought to do and owe it to ourselves to do is to look at funding for the fairground. And I believe that our budget is incomplete to the extent that it leaves out a very important public entity, a very impressive array of some of the most noted people in Tallahassee were here moments ago. Very impressive argument that they came to ask for no more. I feel like Oliver Twist tonight. I just feel like little Oliver with the bowl and just saying, please, sir, more, more. Can I get another little spoonful more? And I'm thinking that you know the conditions of a public facility that we own. And we're just trying to get a chance to use the bathroom, a facility that can accommodate indoor toilet. I'm just a commissioner who I love to see the advancement for the community. I love to see the advancement for the Bradfordville crossing and all of those things. But I just love seeing time stand still and just in that areas of our community, we don't fight for, we passively allow almost their association beneath the rest of Leon County. This is a bad and formidable gap, a divide that is occurring. And in terms of having a place or a sense of place or direction, a site-specific public entity, there may not be private developers as are those who are leading the charge in Bannerman. Bannerman have come from out of nowhere in the last few to come up here and say, we don't want no more. And we have paved the way for that, in particular with our defense of lawsuits that gave the right to developers to move forward, to place the profit-making commercial entities there. The county did that. We fought that fight for private developers to move forward in that area. We were co-defendants. I wish we could put some zeal and some energy into our own public property, that this piece of property on 147 acres is larger than the 30 acres that these people was clowning on tonight. It's larger than the Bannerman Crossing site. And if you look at that dirt, that includes everything from the Wharf Restaurant to Mom and Dad's Restaurant to Chicken Place, Wendy's, you name it, it's there, clustered there. And it's a smaller piece of dirt than what we have to work with in the South Side. And it's really painful to see, here's another budget, but then out of another pool of money called the Blueprint, we have not budgeted for Bannerman Road, but we, from another pool of money, will use Blueprint tax dollars, will bond and advance fund a project that on the books to be done in 2037. That right there straight pisses me off. And what we're doing is not fair. What we're doing is not equitable. And we're not necessarily using this budget, but we are certainly taking advantage to cherry pick projects we want in another budget to advance the community. Now, it would likely need for the county to be the leader, to allow for places to go, like this list right here, and things to do. But for God's sake, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, I'm asking your wakefulness to the disparity that is existent between our facilities and between the geographic areas of Leon County. It ain't fair, and I know that everyone is on their telephones and, you know, checking out Facebook and First One Thing and all like that, and that's cool. I'm about to get on it when you start talking. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. I have no more commissioners in queue to speak. I believe Commissioner Dozier made the motion. Commissioner Dozier made the motion. I believe Commissioner Lindley seconded. I'm sorry, Commissioner Lowe seconded for staff recommend. Yeah. For staff recommendation.
The 3Ds, y'all.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor, don't fall apart on me. We just got a couple more items. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Commissioners, this item, next item, item 28, seeks your approval of a slate of 10 volunteers to help us work on the Miccosukee Sense of Place initiative and to provide plan objectives and funding recommendations to the board. Staff recommends the approval of the entire slate of candidates, which is presented as option 1, and we have no speakers on this item.
Commissioner Dozier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I happily make a motion for this, for giving Commissioner Deloge. We're bouncing back and forth, but this is fantastic, and I love how fast your team's working, Mr. County Administrator.
Much thanks to the staff.
Staff recommendation been moved by Commissioner Dozier, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. All those in favor of the motion on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is the kind of thrust and energy that we want on the fairground. Thank you.
Those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item number 29.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, item number 29 seeks full board appointments to the Big Bend Health Council, Career Source, and the Leon County Educational Facilities Authority. This agenda item seeks your approval to appoint 4 citizens to the Big Bend Health Council, 1 citizen to Career Source, and 1 to the EFA. Commissioners, option 1 is for the board to consider the appointment of the 4 citizens to the Big Bend Health Council for 2 years. The eligible candidates are before you.
Mr. Chair, can I weigh in real quick? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm the board liaison for the EFA. There's a lot of things going on there right now. There's some change as far as who the executive director may be. Southgate has finally gotten some traction, and they've reconstituted that. What I'd like to do, if it's okay with y'all, is basically defer the EFA appointment tonight. It'll come up. They meet quarterly, so in a timely manner in the next couple of months. I just think we've got so many moving parts right now because it's a 5-year reappointment and no reflection on the candidate as much as I just don't think making changes midstream right now make a lot of sense, or even rolling the person over. I think let's let the dust settle in the next 30 days and ask staff to bring it back. And by then I should be able to say, okay, here's what's going on and here's where we're going with this, if that's acceptable.
Is that motion?
Ain't that sort of irregular request? I mean, I thought that when the time is up, the time is up. I remember when.
I think my understanding is they roll for a period of time until, I mean, if there is no appointment, they hold that seat until somebody takes it.
I remember when Giuliani said he should stay the mayor after 9/11. I mean,
Commissioner Lowe's has asked that we delay by 30 days the appointment to
yes, to the EFA. Absolutely.
Second.
I support that. And
As a second by Commissioner Lindley, Commissioner Dozier.
Mr. Chair, 30 days, we're coming back in September, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just wanted to make sure that we can hold those appointments until the next
meeting.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I still have 2 more committees left for appointment.
Mr.
Big
Chair.
Bend Healthcare.
Commissioner Dozier.
I was just going to make a motion for option 2. We'll just clear that one out. There's 1 appointment.
Option 2
or
is
1 name. Yeah.
Option 2 has been moved by Commissioner Dozier, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Is there a motion for option number 1?
That's the Big Bend Healthcare.
Yes, ma'am.
I would make a motion for Mandy Bianchi and Nathaniel Myers.
So
They have 2 appointments.
the motion will be for reappointment for William McCourt, Stephen Rollins, and then you said,
Mandy Bianchi, who is in healthcare,
okay, Mandy Bianchi, and who else?
and Nathaniel Myers.
And Nathaniel Myers. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dozier. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We are done. We'll move now to Commissioner comment. Do I have any unagenda speakers?
1 citizen to be heard on non-agenda items.
Yes, sir.
Stephen Martin.
Mr. Martin, name and address for the record, please, sir. This is the portion where there can be conversation between commissioners and the speaker. Mr. Martin.
I have another copy of what I put up. I want this up there, and I want these words thought of. You got it. I would assume both of the people I've got words of wisdom from are well aware of whom they are. Two commissioners who regularly are known to vote pro-development, not pro-preservation, one of whom gets the heebie-jeebies anytime the idea of somebody getting some value out of land other than maximum financial value. I know at least 4 of you, if not 5 of you, were born here, and this is your homeland. I was born in a different part of Florida, which would still be my homeland.
Sir, could you move the mic down, Mr.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I was born in another part of Florida, and my ties with this state go back further than
anybody up here now, the county attorney, I believe he was born in the same area and lived in the same town I did. He was born 1 year before me. I would like to think that the people who were born here in Tallahassee remember what it was like and have a sense of attachment to what it was, because it's nothing like it was then. And I would like to know whom the people that live in unincorporated areas and want to preserve what got them to that area. I know one commissioner there says about the beauty of this area, and it gets people to call Leon County home. Says that we should be protecting land. Undeveloped tracts have value. Now, of course, he was speaking to the state legislators and asking us to call upon our legislators. Well, you, as far as I know, are legislators. And for somebody who usually touts local government, I would think you would think this would be better in the hands of local government. And so I ask you again, who should the residents of the unincorporated area that are served by you, not by city commissioners, who oppose this city annexation and this push of the city to develop areas that are far removed from already urbanized, but put them in the urban service area? I would just like to know to whom we can go to, whether we should be able to come to you and at least listen to us and not be afraid to stand up to the city and say, you're going too far. These people have a right. I'm just shocked that you have not become more attached to what was here and is vastly disappearing, and you can't bring it back. I would like to think that. And again, what I raised before, golden rule, nobody responded to this. I'd like somebody to tell me why anybody should be able to put in somebody else's backyard what they would never want in their own backyard. And this developer has a track record for doing that. And yet you continue to give him kind of free leeway to do his thing and put the burden on someone else. So again, I'm asking, who can we go to and ask when we want to have areas preserved and not become part of the city, which has plenty of space still within Capitol Circle that it can develop? So I just wonder, this gets down to conflicts of values. And again, I was born in a part of Florida that I wish were like it had been then. I wouldn't be up here now in this part of Florida. I'd like to think somebody here has an appreciation for what was here before and thinks that we have some kind of an obligation to pay attention to the land, God's gift. It's not just us who need the land. There's other entities. I like to think someday we'll be able to think beyond ourselves. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, sir. I move now to Commissioner discussion. Mr. Attorney?
You don't need this.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one item. You received a memorandum from me dated July 6th, which seeks your permission to ask for an Attorney General's opinion on the electronic filing of sealed plans. It's primarily to give us guidance, and so we just need a motion to authorize me to solicit the opinion from the Attorney General.
Commissioner Dozier.
Happily make the motion, Mr. Chair.
Any objection? Second by Commissioner Deloge. Commissioner Dozier.
I just wanted to mention that in case you haven't heard from anyone in the Builders Association or the building community, this issue has been bubbling up, and I wanted to just extend my appreciation to our growth management staff and Barry and David and others who have been working with the builders and the Blueprint Shop and others trying to mitigate this change while we seek this opinion. So it's a little complicated. I know you got more information, but our staff has done a great job trying to work with the builders as we go through this process to find out what we need to do. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Voss, short is passed with no objection. Motion made by Commissioner Dozier, seconded by Commissioner Deloge. Mr. Turner?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Administrator?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lilly?
Mr. Chairman, I think you do a great job of managing big, heavy-duty, intense, and long meetings. Thank you very much for your perseverance.
Thank you.
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Vince is trying to take all the credit, says staff. Yeah. Commissioner Proctor, you ready for us?
Chairman, Commissioners, I just want to say briefly, after our last meeting, I learned that on Mr. Volpe's appointment to the Planning Commission, that several voices suggested that persons who were sitting on the Planning Commission should not run, be on the commission and run for public office, such as for the City Commission. My colleague, Commissioner Daley, made a motion for Mr. Volpe to serve on the Planning Commission, which effectively discharged Diane Cox, Williams Cox from the Planning Commission. After that meeting, subsequent to that meeting, I read in a newspaper that Ms. Volpe had sponsored a fundraiser a month before the motion that Commissioner Daley made to place him on our commission. I learned from a newspaper article that Volpe had conflicts, what you call conflicts of interest, with relatives serving on the planning department. And I think I saw that or heard or something, I think I read it, that his wife worked for our Office of Economic Vitality. At the time that our vote, and this was made, that his wife worked for the Office of Economic Vitality. Now, if she has moved since we've taken that vote, on the night that we took that vote, she worked there. Did she?
No. She had already left, I believe.
What? What? Was she in our employ?
We would have to check on that. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. I think that that was a very disheartening situation. I caught a lot of blowback on that, and that blowback, Commissioner Daley, had to do with it's not a precedent that you have to serve if you express a desire for reappointment. But tonight, I think that we did what was our norm for those persons who express a desire to be reappointed. I think that we acknowledge that typically as we do. It was more so an exception to our norm on what we did last meeting. If we're going to have some rules, y'all, and if it's an offense that a planning commissioner should step down to run for city commissioner, then it ought to be a rule that a county commissioner vacates the seat as well. I mean, vacate, get up off it and go. And the guy running for mayor quit and left, being the chief of staff to the mayor, to run for the position, but quit. I think that there ought to be rules, because I was really blindsided, and I would have lifted that up had I known, but there was nothing on the box to check, I guess, in vetting the man. But what was known to a commissioner but was not known to me was that there had been a fundraiser. And I'm not saying that a fundraiser influences anything, but even the avoidance, the appearance of what looks murky. And I'm just curious about our need for, when we're in campaign season, if either of us are in campaign mode, would it be wise for us to nominate or even to be actively, I'm trying to say something, the word's not coming fast enough, but to take down others and lift up some, in particular when they have made strong campaign support. And I thought that it was good to have friends, people who care about you, but I don't like to vote for stuff that ain't clear to me. And that right there blindsided me, and I'm not sure if we need rules on that, if it's ever going to happen again. But I was really feeling sort of twisted and sideways about that. And I felt that because I was a participant in the vote, even though I was the one versus the six, in the aftermath and the feedback of public that I got, I don't know anybody who's happy, and nor am I. So those are my comments. Have a pleasant vacation commissioners. I'm going to see you guys in September.
I have two. I have Commissioner Lindley and Commissioner Dozier. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say with regard to the Planning Commission, my vote was really because I had read the credentials of all the applicants, and I felt strongly Mr. Volpe was a very, very good candidate as a planner. Your comments on people running for office and serving are well worth considering, but that was not my reason for voting.
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment to close this out, because I was one of the two mentioned running for office. That was a personal choice. I knew it was not a rule. I think the Planning Commission, as we just saw in this public hearing, has a different role than a lot of our advisory boards. And when I look at people, I'm going to say, you know, there needs to be a limit of politics and conflicts of interest on that board. I knew about Mr. Volpe's wife, of course. If I had known about his brother-in-law years ago, I did not think of that in the time for sure. And I think family conflicts within the planning committee, the planning staff, maybe we do want to consider this. We can have this conversation later, but Commissioner Proctor, I know we all have different styles. I truly wish you had brought this issue back up at the board instead of having an article in the paper and everything like that, because I think the tone it set was really different than what our discussion was that evening. So I'd love to talk about this in the future, but for me, Planning Commission is different. Having said that, Mr. Chair, the only thing I have tonight is I've mentioned the Appalachia Regional Planning Council several times. I've now been your appointee for a year and a half, and they are doing some pretty incredible things to turn the organization around, and I would like for the Executive Director, Chris Rito, to be able to come in and give us a presentation. His budget item is kind of automatically in there. We've already approved it, so it may be appropriate in October to get past some of the September work. That would be fine, but I think it would be good for all of us to know what's happening regionally. It ties in with biking and a lot of other different things. So that would be my motion to have a presentation.
Any objection? Seeing none, so clause accepted. I give Commissioner Daly the second on that.
Thank you. And it's been an eventful few months. We've gone through a lot, and look forward to seeing you all outside of the chambers. Obviously, no sunshine. That's always going to sound bad in the next couple months, but we'll reconvene in September. Thank you.
Thank you. I have, let me go with the Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I'll reiterate that it is always good to hear from my colleagues that are more experienced and have more years, but have not lost, I think, the passion for doing what's right. And that's each and every one of you. And I would echo Commissioner Lindley's remarks that you kept the lid on the can tonight. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
What an eventful evening.
How about it?
Yeah, we got a lot of good business done. Just real quick, I want to thank the county attorney for reminding me on several different occasions since the last meeting that nothing unethical or illegal has taken place with any of our appointments to any of the boards in a voluntary capacity with a non-binding vote. And I appreciate you doubling down after a lot of the questions that I asked just to make sure that everything was done above board, which it was. Commissioner Proctor, I am sorry I disappointed you. It probably will not be the last. I look forward to continue working with you. Everyone have a wonderful summer.
Commissioner Deloge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll say the same thing. Nice job tonight keeping it kind of civil and moving forward. And you've had a couple contentious meetings in the last 3-4 months, and you've done a very nice job of keeping the tone down and letting everybody say their piece without, letting it get out of hand. So nothing for me. Enjoy the summer. I know some of us are going up to the NACO annual meeting, which is in Nashville. Let me thank you guys again. You gave me an opportunity 4 years ago, and I ran full steam into it. It's been the ride of a lifetime. I've gotten a chance to do things I never would have expected. So I effectively get pushed off the dais this weekend up in Nashville. So I will be no longer a immediate past president. But it has been the ride of a life, and I want to thank all of y'all because I know you guys stepped in and filled the void. So thank you. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Deloge. Happy?
Talking to the fact
President-elect, thank you very much. A bunch of good stuff happened. As I remember, I think Commissioner Dozier became secretary of our foundation,
Vice chair, the
vice chair
board,
foundation.
and the foundation's changing a lot, so I think we'll be serving.
Hey, Leon County's still doing big things.
But thank you for bringing that up. I will say we had a nice little moment, the county attorney and Commissioner Maddox and I, imagining what his swearing-in ceremony might be like next year, because this was the most animated swearing-in ceremony
You should wear the white suit.
ever. So just be prepared for next year. It's going to be great.
Yes, it is. I look forward to it.
Congratulations.
But, I wanted to say that these past few meetings have been challenging, but I think the board has met that challenge. And I appreciate, as I said before, I appreciate all the citizens that did come out to speak in every one of those instances. But I got to say, if when we come back, we have those same type of meetings, I'm just going to rescind my place as chair and just give it on to Jimbo.
You got Jimbo there.
I am exhausted, man.
Running backs don't like to come out the game.
To clear all these out of the way.
Yeah. But look, have a good summer. Everybody will see you in September? September? Yeah.